Please take a moment to listen to this disclosure from the Common Ground podcast. The Common Ground podcast is dedicated to exploring commonality among individuals with diverse perspectives. Our guests may present unique worldviews related to health, psychology, and overall well-being. Please note that the Common Ground podcast does not directly promote or endorse any specific ideas, concepts, or actions discussed during our episodes. Listeners are encouraged to approach the information shared with discernment and to consult with their mental and/or physical health providers before making any changes to their health or wellness practices. The views expressed by guests and hosts are their own and do not directly reflect the opinions of the Common Ground podcast. Your well-being is important, and we advocate for informed decision-making. Thanks for listening.
I see them pregnant all around me, and they hurt children, and they do all these things, and I'm like, I don't understand. Tell people, because I do train a lot of families that look into adoption. I'm like, if I can talk you out of it, I'm going to talk you out of it. My job as a parent is to plant positive seeds and make sure I'm connected to their heartstrings, and then help them maneuver their way through the world.
You train people to know that whatever they commit to is not legally binding?
I train them to understand what the law currently is.
Welcome to the Common Ground podcast, where stories connect, perspectives collide, and purpose is found in the middle.
Every week, we sit down with unique and inspiring guests that come from all walks of life. People who challenge the status quo, overcome the odds, and live with intentionality.
Whether you're driving to work, on your morning walk, or just looking for that spark to ignite your week, you're in the right place.
Welcome to the Common Ground podcast with your hosts, John Fletcher and Sydney Curtin.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Common Ground podcast. It is your boy, John, here with you today. And, of course, like always, I have my partner in crime, Sydney. And today we have our special guest, Debbie, with us today. Welcome, Debbie.
Thank you. Excited to be here. It's going to be fun.
So, before we start, I just want to say, I just got a question for you guys. What is blue and doesn't weigh much?
I don't know. What?
I don't know either.
Light blue.
Oh. That is correct.
That is.
You're not wrong.
Hopefully that doesn't weigh on your mind the rest of the day.
I know, it's going to be bad.
All right, so welcome everybody. And so just to give you a little introduction, we have our special guest Debbie Simmons today with us. She is the CEO of a large nonprofit organization. She started a ministry 15 years ago. She is the adopted mom of 9 children, and she is the author of Heart of Legacy. So it is our pleasure to welcome you today. And our topic is going to be, sorry, one second. I had it. Surviving and thriving through loss, adoption, and legacy. I wanted to say it correctly because I love the way that's phrased, surviving and thriving. So, welcome. It's our pleasure to have you. Welcome to the show.
Great. Good to be here.
So, Debbie, 9 kiddos is a lot. Tell us just a little bit before we kind of dive into our topic about you. What are you doing right now? How old are your kiddos, or what stages of life are they at? Do you have grandbabies now?
I have 15 grandbabies.
Oh my goodness, yeah. That's incredible.
So I'm into my favorite phase, past the children. I'm into the grandbabies. The grandbabies are great. My children are anywhere from 20 to 34. And so they are moving into adulthood and on, and now giving me fun little grandbabies to play with.
So fun. And this nonprofit, is this what you do full time?
I do. I am the CEO of the nonprofit, so I do that regularly and full time, but also we are expanding my reach through like the book and speaking and really taking that story out to the greater public, because we believe there's a lot of impact that can still be made there. So I don't have to do the day-to-day operations, but I still get to lead the fantastic organization from that perspective.
That's so awesome. We'll have to connect our nonprofits together. I would love to learn more about yours. Yeah. And, Debbie, your story begins with one of the hardest things that a parent can face. Tell us a little bit about that and what led you into this venture.
Sure. Well, I mean, I would tell you that my story is kind of a buckle your seatbelt. There's some highs and there's some lows, and you kind of got to ride the wave. But I had this dream that I wanted to be this young grandma. And I had in my mind the way this was supposed to happen. You know, like it goes, find a guy, get married, fall in love, get married, have children, and then you get grandchildren. And so I'm a do it kind of girl. So I'm like, okay, all right, found in college, found the guy, fell in love, got married, and I was like, let's have kids. And infertility became the name of the game for multiple years. And then ultimately we got pregnant with twins, we thought, and ended up attempting to miscarry those and ended up in a high risk doctor. And they said, oh, you're pregnant with four. And that was kind of a roller coaster because it was like, okay, figured out twins, but I didn't know how we were going to deal with quads. And the long story short is that at 26 weeks, the goal is to make it to 30. At 26 weeks, I find myself in the hospital because one of the baby's sacs had ruptured, and the doctor said, you have to deliver this child. And so I delivered the child. They placed that little boy, Zach, in my arms, and I held him till he passed away. And then the question was whether I could continue to carry the other three. And I got sicker and sicker. And the doctor came in and said, you have to induce. And I induced the other three, and they placed each of them in my arms, and I held them as they passed away. And, really the really learning point and all that, is that night when I was in the room, I couldn't really figure out anywhere else to turn, but it was like, okay, God, I don't know how to get through this. You have to show me how to get through this. And he taught me a good lesson. And the lesson was, you and I, when we're faced with very difficult things, the thought that comes to mind is, why me? Why now? Why this? Why my boys? Why? And what I learned, God just whispered, give me the why. And I'm like, are you kidding me? This is the last thing I have to hold on to. I'm like, this is my last thing. I can control this feeling about this. And he's like, you need to give it to me. But what I learned was why was a very internal question, and it keeps you stuck. And he was asking me to let go of it because he wanted me to learn a different question. And the different question was, how do I survive? And that's the question I began asking. And as I asked that question, he's like, take your next best step. And I'm like, okay, well, what is that? And it varies for each one of us, but I took my next best step because it is movement in a good direction. And then he showed up, and then I took another one, and he showed up, and he took another one. And that's how healing happened. And as I walked through that healing process, then the question began to change. And it was not just how do I survive, but how do I thrive? I don't want to be 34 years down the road from losing my boys and still stuck in the same emotions and trapped. I wanted to have joy. I wanted to live. I wanted to breathe again. And I wanted God to use that story. And so in that process, that is how we ended up adopting. That is how we ended up starting the ministry. It's how we wrote the book. And all those things come out of that tragedy and learning to trust him with it. So that is the roller coaster that has been my journey.
It's an incredible story.
Mm-hmm.
So, you said something that stuck out to me, and I want to go deeper and go a little bit different than what we planned. But you said that because it's all about planning. Because you said that you had a plan, you had your life figured out on what, and you talked about how you felt during it, and I want to see if we can be vulnerable here, because I think a lot of times it comes off like when we go through healing, we tell about the nice parts. We talk about how easy, well, not easy, but how we overcame stuff. And I think about Job, and I think about when Job lost everything. What does his friends say? His friends say, curse God and die. And Job kept on giving the Christian answer, I trust God, He formed me. If he wants to take me, he can take me away.
Mhm.
But I believe that whole journey was to get Job to actually be honest with God, and he gets to a point where he's actually honest with his feelings on God. I know with me, when I went through my divorce, one day when I pulled over and I to the side of the road and I screamed God to take me home because I didn't want to deal with it. God's first response to me was, "I will not give you anything that you cannot bear." And I was like, "What do you think I'm telling you? I can't bear it. I don't want this burden. I don't want to bear this." You know, freak you and freak Bert, because I was like, me and him, I had this honest relationship with God, and me and him fought. I mean, we fought that day, and I told him exactly how I feel, and I told him that I couldn't handle it. I wouldn't be coming to him if I could handle it. I was coming to him because I couldn't handle it. And I remember exactly what he said. He said, "My grace is sufficient for you." And I said, "Well, you can take your grace and you can shove it." And I didn't say it in those polite words, okay? I said it in the most angry, hurtful, pissed off words that I could come up with.
Mhm.
And I'll be honest with you, when I left that conversation with God, we weren't in good places. Now, what held true was that his grace was sufficient for me, that he wouldn't give me anything. Like, he had told me the truth. I just didn't want to hear the truth.
Sure.
So you're sitting there, and your babies are lost. Like, how did you deal with that anger? How did you deal with that disappointment? Because I mean, the lessons you learned and the lessons you talked about are good, but sometimes I think we need to be real with people, because people that are going through pain feel like they're getting angry at God, and they feel like that's a wrong emotion to have. Like, they're not allowed to get angry with God. They're not allowed to be pissed off. That once we get to surviving and thriving, it first has to come with anger, and it first has to become with disappointment. It has to come with pain before we can actually survive and thrive.
Yeah, so it certainly comes with grief, and grief has many different shapes and forms, and all of those feelings are wrapped up under it. I will tell you, mine's a little different because of the high risk nature of the whole process that I was in. So if you back up to infertility, infertility really caused me to question my value as a person, my why do I even want to live? I can't do the things that I wanted to do as a potential mom, and I should be able to have children, and I couldn't control any of that. So some of those types of feelings that you're talking about, I experienced in that. I mean, I clearly remember one time when we didn't get pregnant, I was laying on the bed going, I wish I'm dead, and I'm like, this is terrible. And my husband, came home, and what do you do when you're like depressed and struggling with all that? And he's like, let's go eat. So we went to eat, and I was like, woe is me. And he was like, we get 2 more tries today. He was trying to, cheer me up. And I grabbed the edge of the table and I looked at him and I said, dude, I am going to be upset tonight. And this is how it is going to be. And tomorrow I'll figure my way. But it was like the lowest low. And I couldn't understand why, if you gave me a heart that loves children and wanted grandchildren and all this type of stuff, then why is this so hard? And people who don't even want children, I see them pregnant all around me, and they hurt children and they do all these things. And I'm like, I don't understand. So my struggle started there, in that kind of grasping through that. When we did get pregnant, what was interesting about that was because it was such a high risk pregnancy, what we realized very quickly was even to make it to the next day was a miracle. And so we knew that we were walking into a thing that we had no control over, and that all we could do was trust. So we were in a different place when we got there. And I will tell you, one of the things that we did after the boys, we had a memorial service, and I I actually got up and talked at it. It was kind of funny because I was like, I think I was supposed to talk. And my husband's like, for real? And I'm like, I think so. And what I told everybody was, you know what? I would have rather loved and lost than to never love. Because there the time that I had was precious. And so somehow through that, God protected me in that high risk situation. Now, the infertility, I had the same kind of feelings, and I'm like, I just don't get it. I don't get it at all. But as I continued to trust him through that, and then going into this was, I could have chosen abortion. I could have eliminated two of those children to try and carry the other two. And because I didn't, and I said, no, I'm going to trust you, then it was just a whole different playing field at that point. Now, you would think that that would mean, hey, the boys would make it here. And they didn't. But I'm telling you, it was such a surreal experience. And I have never experienced God as close as I did in that hospital room. That I just knew he covered all of that, and all of the amazing stories that came out of like this. You don't go to the hospital planning a funeral, you go planning a birth. And like, I'm sitting there having to plan a funeral, and I'm like, how do I make this work? And everything just worked out. And so you got to see the hand of God move, but it did require surrender. But surrender happened earlier,
Mm.
that process for me. So it was very different just because of the nature of what it was, but it still had those feelings. They just came in different places.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And, so what led to, where was the pivot where it transitioned into adoption? Because my next question for you was going to be that you've said that God used this experience to develop your faith muscles, and you answered that in a lot of ways. And I really love that. I remember my faith muscles being developed in different ways, being from a different corner of the adoption triangle than you're in. I felt God the same way at that hospital, or a similar way that you probably did, but it was in my surrender, not only of my surrender of my child, but the surrender of the outcome of what her life was going to look like into the realm I was entering into. So where did adoption enter into your life?
Sure. We after we lost the boys, we I was still like, I still want to be a grandma, and can I, like, should we try again? And so we started actually some of the fertility kind of treatments again. And I just remember after about 2 visits, I just went, I can't do this. I can't. I'm emotionally, I am whipped. And it take infertility for so many years. Doing fertility stuff just takes a toll on your body, and my hormones are jacked up. And then losing the boys, and I just said I can't do this, and so we stopped. And God took us on a journey where he actually had me walk away from my job at Exxon and go to seminary so that I could do ministry work. And so some things happened in there. And for the first time in our married lives, both my husband and I both were working and had jobs. And I looked at him and I'm like, dude, I am not getting any younger. So if we think we're going to try, and so this was many years down the road, about 6 years down the road. And I said, if we're ever going to do this, we better do it now. And we actually contemplated trying to get pregnant, and we actually sat down and we had a discussion. And I was like, look, we could spend thousands of dollars trying to get pregnant and end up with no child. And I said, or we could look into adoption, and a child that's sitting legally free that needs a loving home, we could spend thousands of dollars on them.
That's
And
sitting what? What did you say? Sitting what?
they're in the CPS system. They're what they're called legally free. So
So you're talking about children from the foster care system in the custody of the state, not adoption through an agency.
Well, it's through an agency, but the agency was connected to the state. So all of my children come out of the CPS system and were in foster care. So we did
Okay.
straight adopts out of there, but that's where we adopted them. And so we started looking into that, and we went through this whole kind of thought process of, can we possibly love a child that doesn't have our blood? And, I boiled that down to, I looked at my husband, I said, I love you and you don't have my blood. So I can probably love God works in this and that he can do that. And then we just started pursuing that through the CPS system and ended up doing an adoption of a sibling group of 5. And then about 7 years later, a sibling group of 2. And about 3 years after that, another sibling group of 2. So if you want a blended family, it's our place. So.
So were you foster care parents first with those kids, or you just straight adopted them without even having them like in your home as like foster care
Sure.
parents?
Yeah. I'm not a foster mom, for sure. You can ask for children that are already legally free, meaning the parental rights are already severed and these kids just are looking for loving homes. And there's lots of them sitting in our systems today. And we just said those are the ones that we would like to look for because they're ready to be adopted. And we would like to just do straight adopt from that. So that's how we did it. I know a lot of people who foster first, and those children aren't usually legally free, and you're waiting for parental rights to be severed. But in this case, all of these children were.
Did you
What
have to
was
do
your
any
motive?
special? Sorry.
Go ahead. What was your motive for looking for children that were legally free in the care of the state, even though the adoption was through an agency versus going through an adoption agency? What was the thought process there?
Well, generally, if you're going to, there's only 3 types of adoption. There's an infant adoption, there is a CBS foster care adoption, and there's international adoptions. So we actually used an agency that represented us to do that. And they just were connected with, instead of you have a infant adoption where you have an agency that represents the birth mom, you just have these kids in the CPS system. And
so it was the fact that the children were already present. It was the fact that you didn't have to match with a birth mom that may or may not want open or closed or semi-open adoption.
Right. Well, and that would have been okay, but we did not financially think we could afford that infant adoption. And I also knew that based on who we were as a couple, that we did not necessarily want infants. I was like, let's do sibling group and let's do older children. So our youngest child coming into our home was 6 years old. So
The youngest was 6 years old.
yeah, so the first sibling
Okay.
group was 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, and then the second ones were 11 and 13, and then the next ones were 9 and 11.
Okay.
And so I'm like, let's party, let's get these kids in. They know how to dress, we know how to play, we know how to go, and that fit who we were as a couple and kind of the pace we ran and all this stuff. They just worked really well with us. It was a beautiful fit the way God worked that out.
Were any of your other children, the 2 and 2 that you adopted after the initial 5, were any of them either younger at the age that you adopted them or infants?
No. They were 11 and 13, and then the last set was 9 and 11. So we've always adopted sibling
Incredible.
groups and older kids, and so that's how. And then our youngest 2 are African American. The rest are Caucasian.
Okay.
So we mixed, ethnicity and everything together, which makes us a beautiful, complicated mess. That is a great thing.
That's incredible.
So with the adopting, now we're talking about surviving and thriving. Do you feel, what part of the healing process do you feel you had completed? Was this part of the healing process? Did you feel like you had to heal before adopting the kids?
Well, the wonderful thing is that it was 7 years before we adopted. Okay, so there was a lot of time for me to kind of journey through life, and when I kind of started asking that, okay, God, how do I thrive? Question. God opened doors for me to work with families that lost children, or lead grief groups, or just all kind of ministry opportunities, to begin to continue to work through all of that healing process. So we were in a pretty good place emotionally and all that stuff when we got here, because one of the things that I tell people, because I do train a lot of families that look into adoption, I'm like, if I can talk you out of it, I'm going to talk you out of it, because you need to be called to adopt. And the reason is because it's going to have lots of highs and lots of lows, and there is no getting out. This is forever. And so you've got to have stick with itness before you really even meet the kiddos. And these kids, I mean, my kiddos all have trauma backgrounds, all of them. And their life stories are complicated, and life choices as we've turned into adults have not always been good, but they're still my kids, and I get to still be in life with them. And, whether it's been a drug addict, whether it's been someone who lived on the street, someone that prostituted on the street, one that sold drugs, whatever it is, felonies, I got all kind of crazy things. But those are my kids. And if we would not have brought them into our home, could they have been lost to the world?
Let me ask you a question. What is the adoptive families that you do coaching for? Do you do infancy adoption coaching and state adoption coaching?
And international.
So all three types.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But your experience is only with adopting from children that were legally free.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you have any preconceived notions about birth mothers collectively?
That's a great question. Our ministry that I run does nothing but birth mothers. And
Okay.
so we work with girls that find themselves in an unplanned pregnancy, and they don't know what to do. And so we start a journey with them to, and those girls get to choose how they go through this process. And the ones that have, that I have personally known that have made what I call parenting plans of adoption for their children, because it's still a parenting plan. And these girls are so wise and mature and wanting to do the right things for their kids, and we get to journey alongside them on that side. And we don't do placement, but you get to walk with these girls, whether they're choosing to raise their child or they're choosing to make an adoption plan. And I will tell you that I have never met a parent that I go, you do want to be a good parent. Everybody says yes. And these girls want to do the best things for their kiddos. And then, we get to walk alongside them as they go through this process. And if they make this plan that they're going to do adoption, then, as you probably have potentially experienced, is that after they give the child to the other family, they have what I call a year of grief, because they're going.
I'm on year 6 of
Well, I think I never forget that I lost boys, but I always say, that first year, it's like everything is different, and I got to find my way in the world, right? And the same thing happened after I lost the boys. It's like, how do I operate in this new system? And like, what is Mother's Day like, or what is Father's Day like? What is, when their birthday rolls around, and all these things, and we get to come alongside of them, and it's just a pleasure to be able to journey with them through the highs and the lows of that. So I have a lot of respect for birth mothers. And, they make very hard, self-sacrificing decisions when they make an adoption decision.
I do think that, John, I apologize. I'm going to drive for a minute. I do think that it's interesting when you're talking about infancy adoption, then I do believe you're talking about mothers that are selfless. When you're talking about children that are legally free, you're talking about mothers that were honestly milking off the government, hoping to make something work because they didn't know what else to do, regardless if that was because of limited resources or lack of education. There's a different story that comes from that. But my whole thought process boils down to what's best for the child in question. And
Sure.
one of the things so you have coached parents that I've got like 20 questions circulating through my head, but I'm going to try to break this down. So you coach parents that are adopting from all three forms of adoption, which I love. My first question for you, though, is do your children have a relationship with their birth parents? Are birth parents MIA? Or how do you, if there is no relationship, or if there is, honor their stories without making it sound like they weren't cared about prior to them being adopted?
Yeah. So I will tell you that even generally in the CPS system, parents did the best they could with what they had. It may be terrible, but they did
Right.
the best they could with what they had. Okay. So I believe, and what I work with families on understanding if you're adopting is, hey, look, at some point, the birth family might come back in the picture. And in this day and age, there ain't nothing that's closed because we've had birth families surface through the internet. It's easy, and so it wasn't on our plan maybe to have a relationship, and maybe depending on where the children are, like if they turn 18 and they're still curious and whatever connections we can make, each situation has been very unique. My first five, we have that birth mother came back in unexpectedly. And my children were in various places. And so we had to learn how to walk through that. And we had to learn how to help her walk through that because, uh, and my kids, I teach my kids that, you have a unique opportunity to share Jesus with your birth family that I don't have because they see me as a threat or a replacement to them and it makes them feel guilty and stuff like that. And so if you want a relationship and it's a safe place to be, then I want to do that because I want to help them bridge that gap because they have this innate curiosity of like, did my life really matter? And why am I in this situation? And we've worked through tons of that stuff. My second set of kids didn't really want relationships with their biological parents, but they had relationships with their biological grandmother. She came with the adoption. So I told her, I'm like, you're adopting all of us then. You got to adopt all my kids and be grandma to all of them too. And so that was different. Right. And she even lived with us for a while and we kind of got her settled here around us. And then she moved back to where she was from. But, she was special to them and you don't want to cut that off. Right. And then our third set of children, they the birth mother lives closer here. There's been some time in and out of jail. And so she has a relationship with my older child. My younger child is just like, I'm not really interested. And I'm like, it's okay. It's where you are and when you're ready. And if you want to, then I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you negotiate. I'm going to help you figure your way because there's a lot of feelings around that, and different, for everybody. So
Your turn, John. I got 50 more. You won't have another word in if I don't shut up now.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I know this is something that's near and dear to you, so.
I have a lot of thoughts circulating through my head. I think my biggest one is that it's really hard to coach people when you don't have experience on a certain topic. And adoption, even though it's a big umbrella that encompasses these three different types of adoption, international adoptions are closed because of the nature of the culture that you're adopting from, statistically over 90% of the time. And even then, that 10% ends up being close. It's like semi-open at best. We're talking about letters or pictures that adoptive parents are sending. Then we're looking at the legally free, little bit different. I think that comes from, like you said, some unique circumstances where I respect that parents are trying their best and then the state gets involved. I admittedly have less respect for people that know that they're in a bad situation, try to make it work, end up compromising the well-being and safety of their children, and then further compromising that well-being and safety of their children, because it ultimately ends up that those children being in custody or a byproduct of the foster care system or the state, and then legally free to be adopted. When we're talking about infancy adoption, one of the things that you said that I just want clarification on is that the birth parents view the adoptive parents as a threat, because my experience has been, now granted, I come from infancy adoption, so I don't come from legally free. My child was not taken from me. I could not get full custody of my child, and that's why I'm in the situation that I'm in. But I have her adoptive mom that views me as a very real threat, and all I wanted was a relationship with her. So there's no threat. I have had the words come out of their mouth directly that, quote, insert my daughter's name, has a very natural biological connection with Sydney, and therefore we do not feel comfortable having a relationship with her. My daughter wanted me, and it made them feel threatened by my presence, not the other way around. So when you're talking about fostering a healthy relationship, what does that look like, and how do you set boundaries without emotions tying into that are healthy for the child and your family unit in age appropriate ways that are not a reflection of pride?
Sure. No, I get that. And so when I was talking about it, I was talking about my personal situation because that's the question that you asked. And in the situation with this one particular biological mother, and it really had to do more with her being overwhelmed with kind of, she had been abused herself, guilt and shame and all of that. And so any relationship with me felt like I had taken her place, and it just felt like it reminded her that she was a failure. Okay. And so, and when we had a conversation about her engaging with my children, I said, look, I said, it doesn't really matter how you or I feel about this situation. What matters is how we help the kids walk through this. And and we want to help them do it because I said, I have spent my whole life preparing my kids to meet you. And I have spoken highly of you, and that you did the best you could with what you had, and they potentially are open to it. We have to figure that out, but we have to figure that out together. And so we have to partner together to walk through that. So that's my unique situation. In the case with the biological, the infant adoptions, like you were saying, there is a lot more relationship that happens. I have lots of families who have wonderful relationships with the biological moms and dads, and the way that they have structured those. So, part of my job in helping someone think through adoption is beginning to think through, like, how are you going to process this and what is best for the kid? Because it is wonderful if an adoption plan is made that the biological mom and dad can still have a relationship with the kid. That's like the best scenario in the whole wide world. And so I always say, I get to be the life mom and you got to be the birth mom, and so you just got two of us, and that's a wonderful thing. And so that is how I kind of help parents kind of begin to think through. It's like, you're going to do this. Now, since we don't do the placement, I am educating them on the process and helping them understand how to represent themselves well and how to work with agencies that will work with the birth moms that, walk hand in hand with them through the process. And then I am just a sidebar on the side where they can come back to and go, I'm struggling with this. And I'm like, you need to think through this, and just a safe place to process. And I think you need that on both sides of the adoption, for it to be successful. But I love the idea. And it's, you do have to have mature people, the adults, to be able to figure out how to walk through this well, without like going, oh, I've never felt like when my kids met their biological families, I never felt like it was like they were going, like I need to be threatened that they're going to replace me. I know there's enough room in my kids' hearts to love all of us and for, and we can do that. Right. And I know that that's really sounds like what your heart is that, hey, we can do this. We can figure it out. But if I am struggling as the adult or I have insecurities, then that might play over into that. And then it's like there's work on me to be done so that I can be the mom in this situation. And those are challenging because we're all complicated.
Yeah.
And we all bring baggage, right? And so we're trying to work through all that together, and it's a big challenge. And I agree with you. It is really sad that what you said is the way it's kind of gone down because for that child, it could be a situation where there could be a lot of healing with everything. I mean, I know a family where they have a 15-year-old and the biological mom is like the babysitter periodically,
Yeah.
and they've grown and it's a beautiful experience for that 15-year-old.
Mhm.
And, it answers a lot of questions. It helps them understand, all of those things. And I have just story after story of adoptions like that. And so if we can get people healthy before they enter into that adoption system, which gets complicated in a lot of ways, then that is going to be more beneficial for the kids.
You
like
said you're in
And
Michigan?
I'm in Texas.
You're in Texas now? Are you from Texas originally?
I'm from Mississippi originally.
Mississippi. I knew there was an M state somewhere in there. I apologize.
I can't
Okay.
I can't go north of I-10. I get too cold.
No, I hear you there. So I guess are PACAs legally binding in the state of Texas or in Mississippi where you're from?
I do not know what that is. So
PACA is post-adoption contact agreement.
most of the agreements are not legally binding.
Are you a proponent of post-adoption contact agreements being legally enforceable?
What I think is the best thing is that whatever you're doing is like truth. Does that make sense? Like if I go into this and they say it's a closed adoption, but it's really not closed, and I'm like going, I'm confused, right? So if you go in and you're going, oh, it's going to be an open adoption, but there is no legal, like way to enforce that, then it gets confusing. And so I go, we've got to be able to go in with clarity is that this is what we're all committing to. I would hate that we have to make them legally binding, but maybe they do to
Right.
be able
If you're a
to
proponent
do
of truth,
it.
why shouldn't they be legally binding?
Yeah, and so that's the question for me is how do you make the clarity of it? And in lieu of the kids' safety being an issue, then so I find that interesting because I do train families on that kind of the very thing is that, hey, if it is open, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's open, because there's nothing that's legally kind of binding there. I do tell them that.
You train people to know that whatever they commit to is not legally binding.
I train them to understand what the law currently is. I don't encourage them to say, "Hey, go make an open agreement and then change it." Does that make sense? I'm not a proponent of that because I believe that, hey, if you had an open agreement, you should still have an open agreement. And so if you legally have to get there to get that, then that's okay. But I help them just understand that there is no legal piece, even if someone says it is, it's not a legal piece right now. Now
It is
that
in
doesn't
some
mean,
states.
yeah, but it's not where we are. And so I'm like, don't not honor what you're saying. Do what you say you're going to do. And so it's really more just their understanding and to say, hey, when you go in and you make commitments this way, you should honor commitments and you should do the things that you say you're going to do. Because this is the situation in lieu of the kid's safety. This is a situation that you kind of agreed to with this mom, and that's important.
How would you define adoption?
How would I define adoption? Well, adoption for me means they're part of my family and we're here forever. And so we're a new family unit. It doesn't mean that they don't have extended family in the biological family. Or, I mean, like, my goodness, you have all of my brothers and sisters, that now are aunts and uncles, and then you still have aunts and uncles over here. So, but I want a kid to know that, hey, when you are adopted, that this is a forever home, and we're committed to you for life.
I appreciate that, because it should be that way. How do you define then co-parenting, though?
Co-parenting, like even in the case of like a divorce type thing?
Yeah, say that two people got divorced and mom and dad both got remarried to somebody else. What does
Sure.
the step parent, in other words, play in the role of that relationship?
Sure. Well, I mean, you get into the same kind of complexities that you're talking about, because we have, in the stuff that we do at Anchor Point, we have guys and gals that get pregnant, they don't stay together, and you got all these co-parenting situations, right? Okay.
Totally.
What is co-parenting about? Co-parenting is no different than what you were just talking about how do we relate together? And I need you two, as healthy adults, to figure out what your system's going to be, how we're going to do the best thing for the kid. You don't have these kind of discussions in front of the kid. You're not arguing over the kid, in front of them. How do we set this up so that that kid knows how to operate over here? That kid knows how to operate over here, and knows that both of them love them. And I would love for them to have spaces for them in both of the homes, and that because the way you do this will affect the kid forever. And,
Sure.
The divorce was about you, and now dealing with the kid is about the kid. It's not about you. I don't care about any of your drama. I don't care about any of that stuff. It's what's best for the kid at that point. So, I mean, we do have those situations where you're constantly kind of looking at that, and trying to help those two figure their way through that. And it gets complicated because, we all have our baggage, and it's all emotional. And it's like, when we're looking at ourselves, we miss the big picture of the kid, and the kid is what has to be the priority in these situations.
10 out of
Okay.
10.
Hold
I
on.
absolutely agree with that.
I'm going to step in. I'm going to step in now. No, I think this is really good information. I think it's a good conversation. But I kind of want to steer us a little bit back, because I know we don't have much time left. Just to talking about how there definitely is, and I would love to do maybe another episode or a live going more into this kind of stuff that you're talking about, because I think it is useful to people, and I think it can help a lot of people out. But through adoption and through all the things that adoption, as we have been discussing, can really mess things up, and it can become messy, and it can become stressful, and it can become hard. How do we survive and thrive in the midst of that? And how does that lead to, ultimately, I want to get to your book, Heart of a Legacy, and how this has led to a book called Heart of Legacy. So tell us a little bit about how surviving and thriving through adoption, doing that, and starting a ministry that is focused on people who are, I believe, having or thinking about adopting. We never discussed exactly what your ministry was, so
we do a lot of different things, but part of it is helping people that are looking to adopt. So that is part of it. But we also look and work with girls that find themselves in pregnancy situations and just don't know what to do and need assistance. And we have a maternity home, and we do different things like that. But to answer your question is, it doesn't, even in an adoption situation, I mean, even in a biologically intact home where I'm raising a kid, the question becomes, at some point, I feel overwhelmed as a parent, potentially, and not knowing exactly what to do. And kids it's interesting. Kids don't come with instruction manuals. They are the instruction manuals. And they also don't necessarily do everything that I think or want them to do. And that's normal whether it's an adoptive situation or whether it is the other. And so, what I have to really understand is what are the things that I can control? And then what are the things that I can't control? And so, I boil it down to my job as a parent is to plant positive seeds and make sure I'm connected to their heartstrings and then help them maneuver their way through the world. And so, we all know that choices have consequences, right? I mean, if you don't brush your teeth, you might get a cavity. And so there's a consequence to that, right? And so we need to brush our teeth. And so how are we going to get our teeth brushed? And then how can I help you work your way through that? The complexity comes in my situation with children that come with trauma is that, I have to add a layer on there to understand that a lot of times maybe their behaviors are maladaptive behaviors that they have used to survive. And so I have to help them learn new behaviors, rewire the brain so that they can give up those maladaptive behaviors, use their words to get their needs met, and not have to punch a wall or, you know, uh, tear something up or whatever, because this was the way they had learned to survive. And so there is, training in that we can have and that we do that helps families understand how to work with a kid that has a trauma background, so that those families can get connection. Because ultimately, in the end, when my kid turns 18 and they go out and face the real world, um, you know, all I have is the heartstrings left. And, if they go and they do they do a bad choice out in the big world's going to come and get them. They're going to experience consequences even more. I want to always be that safe place they can turn back to, and that I can help guide them through life, and have that. And that only comes if I have the heartstrings and I have the relationship with them.
So tell us about the book and
Sure.
Yeah.
I can do that. The Heart of Legacy was really written out of the losses, that kind of came in the journey that came out of that. And really, this idea of, hey, when I die, I really would like to leave a legacy that can continue on and impact people for years to come. And so, when I was in the room with the boys, one of the things that really became very apparent is that, eternity mattered to me at that point. And I knew that if I wanted to make a difference long after I was gone, then I had to begin to be very intentional now with everything that I did. So, am I working on figuring my way through my healing journey? Am I working on, you know, figuring out how to thrive? And, am I working at being a good mom and starting a ministry and doing all these things? So it took away some of the things that maybe would have been frivolous in my life that I could have wasted tons of hours on. It was like, I want everything to matter. And so, if we want to leave legacies, we have to live them. And so, beginning to invest in that and being wise in that, because we're going to make a legacy. It just may just happen, or we can be intentional. And that's what that whole book is about, is encouraging people that may be stuck to figure out how to get unstuck, or take it to the next level and then go, hey, not only that, God wants us to be impact players. So what is it that he has gifted each of us to do? And how can we do it? And how can we bless the world with it? And it just has ripple effects. And that has got to be good for this world. And so the more we can do that, the better. So that's what that book is about.
And I just got one more final question, and if Sydney has one last question, I'll let her ask after this. But if present day Debbie could go back to before you got pregnant with your 4 boys, and you could say anything to yourself, what would you say?
I would say that none of those hard times were wasted. Nothing I went through was wasted. That God used it, and that he's continuing to use it, and that I'm going to figure my way through.
God doesn't waste pain. Shout out to Mimi, right? John, can't leave her out of this.
Yes.
No, my next question would start a whole nother spiral. So, John, take it away with the key takeaways.
So yeah, it is that time for key takeaways, and
Key takeaways.
so one of the things I was thinking about as I was listening, especially about the whole adoption thing, and the thing that came to me is it breaks my heart, because I think that young girls are having to make adult decisions, and because of because of adult actions done as a teenager. And I really think that us as a society have lost our way. I'm not saying that we can't get rid of teen pregnancy, because, listen, people are going to be people. But I feel like there's such a promotion to do the wrong thing, and to really put our children and make them grow up to be adults way more quicker than they need to. And I think a lot of these issues that happen, are because we're not giving our kids the right messages. We're not protecting them. We're allowing them to participate in adult activities that have adult consequences, but they have to make us teenagers. And I think we as a society need to be much better at that. And to me, this can be avoided. This can be avoided. Like, a young girl doesn't have to go through those kind of choices. But society promotes that kind of adult behavior, and it just breaks my heart, because that's just as I was sitting there, that's what I was thinking about. I was like, and my heart was breaking, and it's like, it's so sad that these girls are put in these positions to have to choose.
It's true. I appreciate that, because it weighs on me a lot. I think that my key takeaway is that surviving is about breathing again, and thriving is about believing again. And Debbie's story just really highlights that loss doesn't end life, that it reshapes it, it refines it, it gives us clarity as to what our purpose is. When we choose faith over fear, and healing over bitterness, or legacy over regret, that we can allow our deepest pain to become the foundation of our greater purpose. So that was my takeaway. I mean, it's a powerful story for sure. It's a complex one, and all of ours are, but there's always, like, God has a reason for all of it, and it's really important to see. So the fact that you've been able to highlight that and create a testimony out of it that you can share with others is really profound, and I appreciate you sharing it with us today. Debbie, if you had, absolutely, if somebody's radio had gone silent for this episode, they just pulled up to work, they got signal again, and this was the only thing they were able to take away from the episode, what would you want them to know? What would your key takeaway be for our listeners today?
My key takeaway would be that we are stronger together when we have grace as our first move in relationships, and seeking to understand the heart of those that we are talking with or working with or whatever, and figuring out how to come alongside each other is just the most powerful and beautiful thing that could possibly happen as we walk through our day, with individuals, but with people that, have gone through difficult things. And I go, that is the gift that we have to give.
Awesome.
Thank you. And I appreciate that. Before we go further, if for some reason a man is still listening to this episode, because I know this is a little more of a female type of episode, I want to sit back and I want to talk to the male right now. and I'm going to give you my male perspective, and it has to be with my takeaway. Because all of this shouldn't fall on the woman or the female or the girl. Fathers, we need to raise up better men. We need to raise up boys that would respect women and not put women in the wrong positions. Us as men need to change the locker room conversations. We need to change what we're proud of. We need to change and become better men. You know, there's generational curses on both sides. But men, we need to stand up and we need to set the example. We need to break the curses. We need to stop raising up boys who are proud to conquer in their eyes women and put them in bad positions. That's not something to be proud of. That's something to be very unproud of. We need to start raising up men to be men and not to be, just led by other parts of their body. So we need to stand up for that. We need to stand up in the adoption process, even though, there's this whole push that it's my body, my choice. That's because we allowed the women to take that choice and we haven't stood by the women. There's no reason why a woman should be making this decision on her own. If you played a part in it, you should be there supporting her. You should be there by her side. You should be there. You should be carrying the burden, not her. You should be lightening her load so that she doesn't have to feel like the whole weight of the world's on her shoulder. So stand up and be men. And that's my just thing. So
welcome to John's TED Talk. Men, comment below.
I was going to get to the whole key takeaways. We would love to hear your key takeaway. I'm sure I'm going to get some hate maybe from it, but
I don't know. I got you.
But comment below on whatever platform you're listening to. Let us know your key takeaway. Men, stand up. I would love to see a bunch of men in the comments saying, let's be men. Men stand up. Hashtag men stand up. I would love to see that go viral. Let's make it go viral. Come on, men. Take the example. And let's start something. Let's not leave women abandoned. That's not cool. That's not manly. So comment below. Give us your key takeaways. And that brings us to our final segment, the Final Five.
The Final Five.
So, the first question for you, Miss Debbie, is who's your hero and why?
I thought about this, and it's who I dedicated my book to, and it was a lady named Nanny. I did not have grandparents growing up, and because they had passed away, because my parents were the youngest of large sibling groups. And she kind of just adopted our family and just let us be her grandkids along with all of her other grandkids. But the thing that I learned most from her was that she had multiple sclerosis for most of the time that I knew her. And I have never met a person who had so much joy amidst so much pain, that taught me how to suffer well, and to still care. Like I can remember times being over at her house and she just was so interested in me, even though she was in so much pain. Do you know what I'm saying? And I mean, it just left a lasting impact on me. And I'm going, I want to learn to love and to be the type of person that she is. And, we weren't even her grandkids, and she still, so I had that reverse kind of adoption thing going on with that. And just was super blessed by that. And that has marked my life, for the good.
It's very cool. I like it. You dedicated your book to her, is what you said?
Yes, I did.
Very sweet.
Yeah, she's
I love
passed away now. Yeah, she made a lasting impact on me, and she didn't have to, but she chose to.
Very nice. My first question for you is, if your kids had to describe you in a single word, what do you think they would pick? If it was majority rules, maybe they would pick a couple different ones, but
I think my kids, it's something to the effect of uh, focused, like she's a go-getter type thing. She's going to if you want something, get mom to get it done. Dad will help you with a lot of other things, but mom stays focused. She accomplishes her objectives. She's going to fight for you. She's going to do all the things for you from that standpoint. So I think that kind of focused word is what would kind of come to mind. They would say I'm no fun too sometimes because I'm like, we got to get things done. So,
yeah,
but that would be the word I think would be focused.
I like it.
So, what is one book or verse or saying or quote that either you live by or has had the greatest impact on you?
Okay, so I love the Bible because it seems to rock my little world all the time. I think I got it figured out. Then, something else stands out. And I'm like, oh boy, I guess I got to work on that too. But the scripture verse that is the one that kind of I just have been resonating with lately is Romans 15:13. And it says, may the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in him, so that you may overflow by the power of the Holy Spirit. And I'm going, I want peace. I want joy, and I want to be filled with this hope. And so all of those words ring for me. And I'm just like, that's what I want. And so that's what I want to lean into. So that's the verse that kind of rolls around in my head right now that he has just sticking out there for me. And that's been quite a while. So, but that's the verse.
With joy, I know it's Jeremiah 31. I forget the actual verse is, for the joy of the Lord is my strength.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. I like Jeremiah too. Both of those are great books. I've been really into James lately. James has been my focus. The next question
James
for
is
you.
Get it done.
It is. Well, that's kind of, we're similar in that way. We're similar in that way. I'm not the sympathy friend. I'm the I need shit to get done friend. Like, that's when people call me.
So James is where the rubber meets the road. That's where the rubber meets the road. So he's
and I'll meet everybody else with the sympathy.
Okay.
He's before me. He's the cry before the siren goes off. We're going to see if John can fix it. If not, we'll call Sid. I love it.
Uh-huh.
Oh, man. Okay, my next question for you is, okay, so legacy is a serious topic, right? And in a good way, but let's keep it fun. So if a movie was made off of your family and your life story, what would the title be?
Well, I jokingly say that my family is kind of like the Geraldo show, if you remember that, and the episodes of that are kind of crazy. But I think what we would say is I would probably say it's one wild ride. That's
I like that.
It's a wild ride. It is. It is. It's a beautiful, redemptive, messy, beautiful thing that God works in, but it's no day's the same. So
at least you went with Geraldo, because Geraldo's the Oprah of compared to Jerry Springer.
Yeah, well, it could be. There are.
John.
I do have some Jerry Springer type episodes, and they're not good, but but they have happened in our family. So
fair enough. All right. Well,
if you could,
go ahead.
If you could sit down and have a cup of coffee and a conversation with somebody living or dead, who would it be and why?
Okay, so this was an interesting pick, but someone told me a long time ago that I reminded them of this lady, and I was like, who in the heck is she? And it is a lady named Henrietta Mears. Okay, and she is considered the grandmother. I got it right here so I can read it so I don't mess it up, but the grandmother of modern evangelicalism. Okay, and she was actually a Sunday school teacher of a college department at Hollywood Presbyterian. Okay. Now, I want you to listen to just some of the names that she influenced. Okay. She was directly responsible for influencing Billy Graham, Bill Bright, who was the founder of Campus Crusade, Richard Halverson, who served as a chaplain of the U.S. Senate, Lewis Evans Jr., who was National Presbyterian Church in Washington, D.C., who was a pastor there, Charles Fuller with Fuller Theological Seminary, Stuart Briscoe, who's a pastor. The list goes on and on and on for the amount of people that took like her investment in them and then rippled everywhere. And I'm like, girlfriend, this was a long time ago. I'm like, tell me how you managed to do this. I'm like, I'm just really curious. But she just had an amazing impact on what we know today of these people who have carried that message forward. And I'm going, there's probably a lot of good stuff to learn from her. And I would enjoy that.
I'll have to
And
read
I
on
had
that
never
a little
heard
bit.
of her. So I had to go
No,
buy
me
the
neither.
book.
So that was new for me too. So now I've got some homework to do, but that's cool. I like the names that you brought to it. Otherwise, I may have been like, okay, I don't know. I don't have a clue who this person is. So
no, I was flabbergasted when I first caught. I was like, oh my gosh, she did Billy Graham, she did this guy, and then another guy, and I was like, wow, she really had the opportunity to invest into a lot of people that I kind of look up to through the years.
made a wave,
and that's pretty amazing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like it.
So that's a legacy, and that's cool. Yeah,
that is very cool. Awesome. Well, Debbie, if folks want to reach out to you or find you to follow what your latest ventures are, where can they look you up, or how do they get in touch with you?
Sure. One of the best ways is just to go to the website, which is the Debbie Simmons, THE, then DebbieSimmons.com. Or if they want the Heart of Legacy, that is a free book that they can get. It's my gift to your listeners. And they just go to theheartoflegacy.com and it will walk them through the step and they can get that book and just enjoy it and pass it on to whoever they want to pass it on to.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much again. And thank you for being our guest. And remember, when we take the time to hear someone's story, it gives us the opportunity to find common ground. Thank you again, Debbie, for being our guest today. For Sydney and myself, it has been our pleasure to be your host, and you have been listening to the Common Ground Podcast. God bless and good night.
And that's it for today's episode of the Common Ground Podcast. We hope you're leaving with a little more perspective, a little more purpose, and a whole lot more inspiration.
So thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it. Thank you to our special guest.
If today's conversation moved you, encouraged you, or challenged you in any way, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, rate it, leave us a review. Your support helps us reach more people who need to find their own common ground.
So for John Fletcher and Sydney Curtin,
we'll see you right here next week, same time, same place on the Common Ground Podcast. Make it a great week.